A Hell's Angel found a little girl, collapsing in the blazing heat. The reason she was there shocked everyone. The desert did not care who you were. It did not care about your name, your past, or the patch on your back. It just stretched out in every direction, wide and silent, baking everything underneath a sky so blue it almost hurt to look at. The sun sat high and angry above the cracked earth, pouring heat down like it had something to prove. Cole Walker had been riding for 3 hours without seeing another soul. That suited him just fine. His motorcycle moved steady and low along the empty highway, the engine rumbling beneath him like a living thing. The road ahead shimmered with heat, the kind of shimmer that made the distance look like it was full of water that was never really there. Dry brush dotted the landscape on both sides, pale rocks, red dirt, a few scraggly trees that looked like they had been fighting to survive for 100 years. Cole understood that kind of fight. He was 45 years old, and he wore every one of those years on his face. Deep lines around his eyes, a jaw that was rough with stubble going gray at the edges. His leather vest sat heavy on his broad shoulders, covered in patches and pins that most people did not want to get close enough to read. His arms were thick and covered in tattoos, ink that told the story of a life that had gone sideways more than once. Dark sunglasses hid his eyes from the glare. Before you continue listening, please let me know where in the world are you watching from today. Now back to the story. To anyone passing by, Cole Walker looked like trouble. He knew that. A gas station attendant in the last town had watched him from behind the glass, hand resting close to the phone the whole time Cole was filling his tank. A woman had pulled her kid closer when he walked past the ice machine. A group of men outside a diner had gone quiet, and stayed quiet, until he rode away. Cole had stopped being surprised by that a long time ago. People saw the vest. They saw the tattoos. They made up their minds before he ever opened his mouth. He had tried fighting it when he was younger, getting angry about it, explaining himself. But explaining yourself to someone who had already decided the truth did not do much good. So he let them think what they wanted. He just kept riding. The heat today was something else, though. The radio at the gas station had been buzzing about it all morning. Some announcer calling it the worst heat wave the region had seen in over 20 years. Temperatures pushing past 110 degrees by noon. Warnings for people to stay inside, stay hydrated, stay home. Cole wiped the back of his hand across his forehead and felt the sting of sweat. The air rushing past him on the bike was hot, not refreshing, not cool, just hot, like someone had left an oven door hanging open across the whole desert. He reached down and grabbed his water bottle from the side bag, taking a long pull without slowing down. Warm water. But it was something. The highway stretched on. He passed a broken fence post leaning sideways in the dirt, an old tire half buried by the side of the road. A faded sign for a town that was probably not much of a town anymore. Out here, the desert swallowed things whole. Buildings, roads, people too sometimes. Cole kept his eyes forward, the way he always did, watching the road, watching the horizon. That was when he saw it. Something small. Off to the right, beside what looked like an old wooden stand, the kind of roadside fruit stand that had probably not been used in years, sun-bleached boards, a crooked roof barely holding on, and there, beside it, on the ground, a figure, small, very small, not moving. Cole's hand was already pulling the brake before his mind fully caught up with what his eyes were telling him. The motorcycle slowed fast, gravel crunching under the tires as he pulled off the highway and brought the bike to a stop. He was off the seat before the engine had even finished ticking. He ran toward the figure without thinking twice. It was a little girl. She was lying on her side in the dirt, curled up small against the base of the old stand, Her knees were pulled in close to her chest. Her cheek was pressed against the cracked ground. She could not have been more than 7 or 8 years old. Cole dropped to one knee beside her. "Hey." His voice came out low and careful. "Hey, can you hear me?" She did not answer, but she was breathing. He could see the shallow rise and fall of her small chest. That was the first thing he checked. That was always the first thing. Her skin was hot to the touch. Too hot. Her face was flushed a deep, burning red, and her lips were cracked and dry. Her dark hair was plastered against her forehead in wet strands. She was wearing a light blue shirt and shorts, and her shoes were little more than rags at this point. The soles were worn completely through on one side. Those shoes told him something. He filed it away. In her arms, pressed tight against her chest like a sleeping child holds a stuffed animal, she was clutching 2 things: an old photograph and a sealed envelope. Her small fingers were wrapped around them, even in her unconscious state. Cole looked around fast. No car, no adult, nothing in any direction but the empty highway and the wide, burning desert. He had to work fast. Heat this bad could turn dangerous in minutes. He moved to his motorcycle without wasting time and yanked open the side bag. He pulled out his water, his small first aid kit, and his riding jacket. The jacket was heavy and dark, and in any other situation it would have been too hot to think about. But shade mattered more than comfort right now. He came back and carefully propped the jacket up against the wall of the old stand, creating a small patch of shadow over her head and face. Then he knelt close and opened his water bottle. He poured just a little into his palm and pressed it gently against her lips, careful not to give her too much at once. Her body needed to come down slowly. "Come on, kid." His voice was quiet. "Stay with me." She stirred, just barely. Her eyelids fluttered. "There you go." He kept his voice calm. He had seen heat exhaustion before. Panic made it worse. "Take it easy. I got you." He poured a little more water onto a bandana from his bag and pressed it gently against the back of her neck. A basic move. But it worked. The cool cloth against the skin helped pull the heat out from the inside. Her eyes opened part way. They were dark brown and glassy, struggling to focus. She looked at him, and he watched something move across her face. Not relief, not calm, something closer to alarm. Her arms tightened around the photograph and the envelope. "Those are mine." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I know," Cole said. "I am not taking them." She stared at him for another second. Her grip did not loosen, but the alarm in her eyes settled just slightly. Cole had already pulled out his phone and was dialing. Out here, the signal was thin and unreliable, but the call connected on the 3rd try. He gave the dispatcher the highway number and his location markers, describing what he saw, keeping his voice even and clear. The dispatcher told him help would be coming. 20 minutes, maybe a little more. He hung up and looked back at the girl. She was drifting again, her eyes going heavy. "What is your name?" he asked. Her lips moved. The word was soft. "Mia." "All right, Mia." He shifted his jacket slightly to follow the angle of the sun, keeping the shadow over her face. "I'm going to stay right here. Nobody is going anywhere." She did not answer, but her eyes stayed open a little longer this time, watching him. The desert was still and blazing all around them. Cole Walker sat beside her in the dirt and waited. The paramedics arrived in a rush of sound and movement that felt wrong in the silence of that empty road. 2 of them jumped out before the vehicle had fully stopped. Cole stepped back to give them room. He watched as they moved over Mia quickly and carefully, checking her pulse, her temperature, talking to each other in clipped professional sentences. A 3rd responder approached Cole. Young guy. He looked at the leather vest and the tattoos, and his expression shifted just slightly. Cole noticed. He always noticed. You the one who called it in? The young man asked. Yes. She was like this when you found her? Unconscious when I got here. Came around briefly. Told me her name. The young man wrote something down. He asked Cole to stay nearby for questions. Cole nodded and stayed where he was. Across the dirt, one of the paramedics was trying to gently move Mia onto a stretcher. The girl had drifted back toward unconsciousness, but the moment the paramedic reached for the photograph and envelope in her arms, her whole body stiffened. No. The word came out thin and ragged, but firm. Her hands locked tighter around both items. No! Those are mine! The paramedic pulled her hand back gently. Sweetheart, we just need to... No. Mia's eyes were barely open, barely focused, but the grip did not give, not even a little. Cole watched. He did not step forward. He did not interfere. But something in that moment caught him somewhere behind the chest and stayed there. A little girl that barely had the strength to speak, holding on with everything she had left. They let her keep the items. There was not much choice. She was loaded onto the stretcher carefully, the photograph and envelope still pressed tight to her chest, and the responders moved fast toward the vehicle. Before they closed the doors, Mia's eyes found Cole one more time. She did not say anything. She just looked at him. Then the doors shut. The lights came on. The vehicle pulled away down the empty highway, kicking up a small cloud of pale dust that the wind took and scattered. Cole stood beside the old fruit stand and watched until it was gone. The hospital was small. One story, pale yellow walls, the kind of place that smelled like antiseptic and recycled air the moment you walked through the sliding doors. A row of plastic chairs lined the waiting area. A television mounted in the corner played the news on mute. A ceiling fan turned slowly overhead, not doing much of anything. Cole sat in one of the chairs near the far wall. He had followed the ambulance here on his motorcycle, staying a few car lengths back the whole way. He was not sure exactly why. He told himself it was because the authorities might need more information from him. That was part of it. But it was not all of it. The truth was simpler and harder to explain. He had found her, and until somebody told him she was going to be okay, he could not make himself leave. A nurse had taken his name and asked him a few questions at the front desk. A police officer had done the same thing about 10 minutes later. Cole answered everything they asked. He kept his answers short and clear. He had learned a long time ago that short and clear worked better for someone who looked like him. The officer was polite enough. A man in his 40s, calm, a little tired around the eyes. He wrote everything down and thanked Cole for calling it in. "We are trying to reach her family now," the officer said. "We are thinking she probably wandered off from somewhere nearby. Kids do that, especially in summer." Cole nodded. He did not say what he was already thinking. The officer moved away to speak with one of the nurses. Cole heard pieces of the conversation from where he sat. Lost child. Heat exposure. Probably a campsite or a rest stop nearby. Maybe a family that had not noticed she slipped away. It happened more than people thought. That was the story everyone in the building seemed to have already decided on. Cole leaned back in the plastic chair and pressed his hands together, resting his elbows on his knees. He kept thinking about her shoes. He had noticed them the second he knelt down beside her in the dirt. The soles were worn completely through on the bottom right side. Not from everyday use. That kind of wear was earned. It came from walking long distances on rough ground, on pavement, on packed desert earth. The kind of walking that took hours. Maybe longer. A kid who wandered away from a nearby campsite did not wreck her shoes like that. He thought about the backpack she had been wearing. Small and faded, with a cartoon sun on the front. When he had steadied her to check her condition earlier, he had felt how light it was. Almost nothing inside it. He had not gone through it. That was not his place. But a child heading out on a casual walk near a campsite usually had snacks, a water bottle, something. That bag had felt nearly empty. None of it added up. And then there was the direction. That was the thing that stayed with him most. The highway where he had found her ran east to west through an open stretch of desert. The nearest town with any real services, houses, and people was about 14 miles back to the east. He had passed through it on his way out. A small place with a gas station and a diner and a few streets of quiet homes. When he found Mia, she had been lying on the west side of the stand. Her head had been pointing west. Her destroyed shoes had been pointed west. She had not been walking toward that town. She had been walking away from it. A lost child, scared and exhausted, would have been trying to get back toward people, toward safety, toward home. Mia had been heading the other direction entirely. Cole sat in the plastic chair under the slow ceiling fan and stared at the floor. The story everyone had decided on did not match the girl he had found in the dirt. She had not wandered off by accident. She had been going somewhere. A nurse came out about 40 minutes later. She was a short woman with kind eyes and gray streaks in her dark hair. She told Cole that Mia was awake, that her temperature had come down, and that she was resting comfortably. She paused after saying it, looking at him the way most people did, taking in the leather vest, the tattoos crawling up his forearms, the size of him filling the plastic chair. "She has been asking about the man who found her," the nurse said carefully. Cole stood up. "That would be me." The nurse studied him for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. "She seems calmer than I expected, given everything. I will walk you back, just for a few minutes." The room was small and quietly lit. The blinds were half closed against the afternoon sun. A monitor beeped steadily near the bed. Mia lay propped up against a white pillow, an IV line taped to the back of her small hand. She looked even younger than she had in the desert. Smaller somehow, like the hospital bed had swallowed her up. But her eyes were open. And when Cole stepped through the doorway, those eyes found him immediately. He crossed the room slowly and pulled a chair close to the side of the bed. He sat down so he was closer to her level. He did not want to stand over her. He did not want to feel big in that room. "Hey," he said. "Hey," she said back. Her voice was dry and thin, but steady. "How are you feeling?" She thought about it seriously, like it was a real question that deserved a real answer. "Better than before," she said. "Good." Cole rested his hands on his knees. "You gave me a scare out there." She looked at him for a long moment. "You stayed," she said. It was not quite a question. "I did." "Why?" He considered that. "Because I wanted to make sure you were okay." She seemed to accept that. Her fingers moved to the edge of the thin hospital blanket, picking at a small thread there. It was the kind of thing a kid did when they were thinking hard. Cole did not push her. He had learned something over the years, not from any book or any lesson, but from the road, and from the kind of life he had lived. People opened up when they felt safe. You could not rush that. You could not force it. You just had to sit still and let them decide you were worth trusting. So he sat still. After a while, Mia spoke. "Are they going to send me back?" I think they are trying to reach your family right now, Cole said carefully. Something crossed her face, a quiet kind of pain she was trying not to show. I do not have a lot of family left, she said. Cole kept his voice easy. Who takes care of you? My Aunt Rosa. She watches me when my dad is gone. She said the last word in a way that made it clear the going had been much longer than it should have been. Cole watched her face. Your dad has been gone a while? She nodded. Her chin dipped down, and her jaw tightened just a little. He let the silence sit for a moment. Mia, he said gently, you were not lost out there, were you? She looked up at him. Her dark eyes were steady and full of something that was older than 8 years old. Something earned. No, she said quietly. You were going somewhere. She nodded again. You want to tell me where? She was quiet for a moment longer. Her fingers stopped picking at the blanket. She pressed her lips together, and then she said it plainly, like she had been waiting to say it to someone who might actually listen. I was going to Seco Flats, she said. It is the town where my mom used to live. I think someone there knows where my dad is. She paused. His name is Daniel Reyes. He is a firefighter, and everybody thinks he left us. But he did not. He would never leave me. Cole did not move. He did not reach for his phone or look toward the door. He just stayed right where he was, elbows on his knees, eyes on Mia. Tell me about him, he said. She looked at him carefully, measuring him, the way kids sometimes do when they are deciding whether an adult is actually going to listen or just pretend to. Then something in her face settled. He was a volunteer firefighter, she said. He did not get paid for it. He just did it because he wanted to help people. She said that last part with a quiet kind of pride, like it was the most important thing about him. Sounds like a good man, Cole said. He is. She caught herself on the word. He is a good man, not was. Right, Cole said, is. She pulled the blanket a little higher over her lap. There was a big fire last year, out near the Camino Ridge. She said the name like she had said it many times in her head. It was really bad. A lot of families lost their homes. Some people almost did not get out. She paused. My dad was one of the people who stayed behind to help them. He helped get people out? She nodded. Him and some other volunteers. They stayed out there for a long time, even when other people left. My Aunt Rosa said he called her the night before everything got really bad. He said he was okay, that he would be home soon. She stopped. The monitor beeped quietly beside her. The afternoon light pressed soft and golden through the half-closed blinds. But he did not come home? Cole said. No. Her voice was small but steady. After the fire, people could not find him. The other volunteers came back, but not my dad. She looked down at the blanket. The officials said he probably just walked away. That maybe the fire scared him and he left. That maybe he did not want to be found. Cole watched her face. People believed that? He asked. Most of them did. She said it plainly, without bitterness, like it was just a fact she had gotten used to carrying. My Aunt Rosa cried for a long time. A lot of people said we should stop looking. Her jaw tightened just a little. But I never believed it, not for even 1 second. Why not? She looked up at him then, right at him. Her dark eyes were clear and certain. Because I know my dad, she said. He called me every single night, even when he was out on a call, even when he was tired. He always called. Always. She shook her head slowly. A man who calls his daughter every night does not just walk away. Cole did not say anything. He let those words land. She was right. That was the thing. She was just a little girl in a hospital bed with an IV in her hand, and she was completely, absolutely right. So you went looking for him yourself, Cole said. I heard my aunt on the phone a few weeks ago, Mia said. She was talking to someone about a town called Seco Flats. She said my mom used to live there before she got sick. She said there was someone in that town who might have known my dad before everything happened. She folded her hands together in her lap. I did not want to wait anymore. Cole nodded slowly. He understood that. The waiting. The way it hollowed you out if you let it go on too long. Mia reached over to the small table beside the bed. The nurse must have placed her backpack there. She unzipped the front pocket carefully and pulled out something wrapped in a piece of folded cloth. She unwrapped it slowly, like it was something fragile. Something that mattered more than anything else she owned. It was a photograph. Old and slightly worn at the edges, the colors just a little faded. A man and a woman standing outside a small building in the bright sun. The man was tall, with a wide smile and kind eyes. The woman was laughing, leaning slightly into his shoulder. Mia held it out to Cole. "This is my dad," she said, "and my mom." Her voice softened on the second word. "I carried it because I think this town in the background is Seco Flats. I think it is the only clue I have." Cole took the photograph carefully. He held it by the edges the way you hold something you know matters to someone else more than it could ever matter to you. He looked at the man in the picture. Tall, wide smile, eyes that looked warm even in an old, faded photo, and the woman beside him, laughing like she had not a care in the world. "Your mom looks happy," Cole said. "She was," Mia said softly. "She was always laughing." Cole studied the background of the photo. A small, flat-roofed building behind them. A water tower just visible at the edge of the frame. Dry land stretching out behind it all. It could have been Seco Flats. It had that kind of look. Quiet. Dusty. The kind of town people passed through without stopping. He handed it back to her gently. Mia took it and turned it over in her hands. She had a careful way of handling it, like a habit she had built over many months. Turning it, checking it, making sure it was still there. Then she stopped. She frowned just slightly, her small fingers pressing against the back edge of the photo. "Something is here," she said. Cole leaned forward. "What do you mean?" She pressed the corner of the photo carefully. There was a stiffness to it, not the stiffness of an old photograph. Something else. Something behind it. Cole reached over slowly. "Can I?" She handed it to him. He turned it over and looked at the back closely. The bottom edge of the photo had been folded up just slightly, sealed down with a thin strip of tape that had been pressed so flat it was almost invisible. It blended right into the worn surface. Behind the photograph, tucked flat against it, was a small envelope. Thin. Folded once to fit. The kind you could miss 100 times if you were not looking for it. Mia stared at it. Her mouth opened just a little. "I did not know that was there," she whispered. Cole set the photograph down gently on the bed beside her. He turned the envelope over. There was no name on the front, no address, just a single word written in small, careful handwriting. It said, "You." Cole looked at Mia. She looked back at him with wide eyes. "Open it," she said quietly. He worked the edge open carefully and pulled out a single folded piece of paper. The handwriting inside was the same. Small and careful, like someone who had chosen every word slowly and on purpose. Cole read it. The letter started without a greeting. It went straight into it, the way someone writes when they do not have much time. "If you're reading this, then she found you. And if she found you, then you stopped. That matters more than you know." Cole felt something shift in his chest. He kept reading. "My name is Daniel Reyes. I was a volunteer firefighter on the Carmino Ridge fire. I disappeared because I had to. Not because I wanted to. I found something before the fire that certain people did not want found. Evidence that warnings were ignored. That families were put at risk on purpose to protect someone's money and reputation. When I realized what I knew, I understood that coming home would bring danger directly to my daughter. So I hid. But I have been watching, waiting, hoping someone would come. I am not writing to a friend or a neighbor or a lawman. I am writing to a stranger, a specific kind of stranger. I heard stories from other firefighters and rescue workers about a man on a motorcycle, a Hell's Angel who people crossed the street to avoid, a man who looked like trouble but kept stopping to help people on the road, fixing things, carrying things, giving water, giving time. I wrote this letter because of one thing I heard about him. He never once drove past someone who needed help. That man is the only kind of person I trust right now. Find him. If my daughter is reading this with him beside her, then she already did. Cole stopped. He sat very still. Mia was watching him, her small hands pressed flat against the blanket. "He wrote it for you," she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "He did not know your name, but he knew you would stop." Cole read the letter again. Then he folded it slowly and set it down on the bed beside the photograph. Mia had not moved. She sat with her hands pressed flat against the blanket, watching him the way a child watches an adult they are not yet sure they can trust. Like she was waiting for him to say it was too much, too complicated, too dangerous. He looked at her. "I am going to help you find him," he said. No big speech, no promises about how everything would be okay. Just that. Mia blinked. Her chin trembled just slightly before she pulled it steady. "You mean it?" she asked. "I do not say things I do not mean," Cole said. She nodded once. Like that was enough. Like she had learned not to ask for more than what was offered. Cole tucked the letter back inside the envelope and held it out to her. She took it and pressed it flat against the photograph the way she always did. Careful. Deliberate. He stood up. "Get some rest. I will be back in the morning." She lay back against the pillow and closed her eyes before he even reached the door. Cole spent the rest of that evening in the hospital waiting area with his phone. He was not a man who used it much, but he knew people. Firefighters he had helped on the road over the years. A paramedic named Roy, who owed him a favor. A man named Gus, who had worked fuel lines near Carmino Ridge and talked too much when he was nervous. He started making calls. It took most of the night. What he learned came in pieces, the way truth usually does when someone has worked hard to bury it. The Carmino Ridge fire had burned through 40,000 acres 3 years back. 18 families lost their homes. 2 people never made it out. The official report said the fire spread too fast to stop. Wind conditions, dry brush, bad luck. But there were firefighters who had never agreed with that report. Cole heard it in their voices. The pauses. The careful way they chose words. Like they were still worried someone was listening. One of them, a man named Harv, who had been on the Eastern Line that day, said something that stuck with Cole. There were warnings posted 3 days before it jumped the ridge. Official channel warnings. Somebody logged them. And then they just disappeared from the record. Daniel Reyes was the one asking questions about that. Asking loud. Cole leaned forward in his chair. What happened after he started asking? Harv was quiet for a moment. He disappeared, he said, and nobody asked questions after that. Cole thanked him and hung up. He sat back and looked at the ceiling. The hospital hummed quietly around him. A nurse walked past. A television at the far end of the room played the late news, with the sound turned low. The name Ethan Voss came up twice during his calls. Not because anyone said it directly, because they stopped talking right before they would have had to. Cole knew that pattern. He had seen it before. The shape of a name people were afraid to say out loud. He wrote it down in the small notebook he carried in his vest pocket. He underlined it once. In the morning, he signed the paperwork the hospital needed. A nurse had explained that Mia had no emergency contacts they could reach, and that Child Services had been notified but had not yet sent anyone. Cole said he would stay with her until family was located. The nurse looked at him for a moment, took in the vest, the tattoos, the size of him. Then she looked at Mia, who was standing right beside him with her backpack on and her hand loosely near his arm. The nurse nodded and handed Cole the forms. They walked out into the morning together. The heat was already building. The parking lot shimmered at the edges. Cole walked Mia to his motorcycle and helped her with the spare helmet he kept strapped to the back. He had barely looked up when he noticed it, a silver truck, parked at the far end of the lot. Engine off, no one getting in or out, just sitting there. Cole had been on enough roads to know the difference between a truck parked and a truck waiting. He did not look at it again. He kept his voice easy and calm. "Ready?" he asked Mia. "Ready," she said. He started the engine, but as they pulled out, Cole watched the truck in his mirror. It pulled out too. Slow, keeping distance. Cole said nothing. He just rode. But his jaw tightened just slightly, and his eyes stayed on the mirror longer than they needed to. The silver truck stayed with them for about 6 miles. Then it turned off at a crossroads and disappeared behind a low ridge. Cole did not relax right away. He never did. But after another mile, with nothing in the mirror but dust and open road, his shoulders settled just slightly. Mia sat behind him with her small hands holding onto the back of his vest. She had not said much since they left the hospital, but she was not the kind of quiet that worried him. It was the kind that meant she was thinking. The desert stretched wide on both sides of the highway. Red rock and dry brush and sky so blue it almost hurt to look at. The air was hot and clean. Telephone poles ran along the road like a long line of tired soldiers. After a while, Maya leaned slightly forward. "What was that truck?" she asked. Her voice was just loud enough to carry over the engine. Cole kept his eyes on the road. "Nothing to worry about right now." She was quiet for a moment. "But you were watching it." "I watch everything," he said. "It is just what I do." She seemed to accept that. Her grip on his vest stayed steady. They stopped about an hour into the ride at a small gas station near a town that barely had a name. Just a weathered sign and a row of pumps and a little store with a fan humming in the window. Cole filled the tank and bought 2 bottles of water and a pair of sandwiches wrapped in wax paper. He handed one to Mia, and they sat on a low concrete wall in the shade at the side of the building. Mia unwrapped her sandwich carefully and took a small bite. She looked out at the road. "My mom used to bring me sandwiches like this," she said, "when we went on drives." Cole looked at her. "You two did that a lot?" "Sometimes. She liked to go out to the desert early in the morning before it got hot." Mia turned the sandwich in her hands. She said the desert looked different in the morning. Softer. Cole looked out at the road, too. "She was right," he said. Mia smiled just a little. It was a small, careful smile, like she was still deciding if it was okay to feel something good. They finished eating and got back on the road. The miles kept coming. The land around them shifted slowly. The flat, open stretches gave way to low, rolling hills and dry creek beds, and scattered patches of scrub trees that bent toward the south, like they had been leaning away from the wind for so long they forgot how to stand straight. At some point, Mia spoke again. "Did you always ride motorcycles?" "Most of my life," Cole said. "Do you ever get tired of it?" He thought about that, honestly. No, he said. The road is the one place where things make sense. She seemed to think about that for a while. I think I understand that, she said quietly. Cole glanced back at her for just a second. She had her chin lifted, looking out at the land passing by. There was something in her expression that was older than 8, something that had been shaped by loss and distance and too many days of carrying things alone. He turned back to the road and said nothing more. But something in his chest felt different than it had that morning. The town of Callaway was small in the way that only desert towns can be, quiet and sun-worn and stubborn about still being there. Main Street was 2 blocks of old storefronts, a post office, a diner, and a hardware store with a hand-painted sign in the window. Cole parked near the end of the block. The old volunteer fire station sat at the corner, its doors pulled shut. The painted lettering above the entrance had faded but was still readable. A bulletin board hung beside the door, covered in papers and notices curling at the edges from the dry heat. Cole looked at Mia. She was already looking at the station. "This is the place," she said. He nodded. "Then let us go see what they know." The door to the old fire station was unlocked. Cole pushed it open slowly and held it for Mia. Inside, the air was cooler and smelled like oil and old wood and something faintly metallic. The main bay was empty of trucks but full of other things. Shelving units lined the walls, stacked with folded gear and coiled hoses and plastic bins labeled in black marker. A long workbench ran along one side. Tools hung above it on pegboard, each one outlined in faded paint so you could tell at a glance if something was missing. 2 men sat at a folding table near the back wall. One was reading a newspaper. The other was working on something small with his hands, though Cole could not see what from the door. They both looked up when Cole and Mia walked in. The man with the newspaper was older. White hair cut short, thick forearms, a face that had spent decades in the sun. He wore a plain blue shirt with the sleeves rolled up. The other man was younger by maybe 10 years, heavier, with a gray beard and careful eyes. The older man set down his paper. "Help you?" he said. His voice was not unfriendly, but it was measured. The kind of voice that waited before deciding things. Cole stepped forward. "My name is Cole. This is Mia. We are looking for information about a man named Daniel Reyes. We were told he volunteered out of this station before the Harlan Creek fire." The 2 men exchanged a look. The older man stood up from his chair slowly. He was tall, built like someone who had lifted heavy things his whole life and was not quite done yet. "Where did you hear that?" "From his daughter," Cole said. He looked down at Mia beside him. Mia met the man's eyes without looking away. "He is my dad," she said. Her voice was steady. "I'm trying to find him." Something shifted in the older man's face. The careful wall he had put up came down just slightly. He looked at Mia for a long moment, then pulled out the chair next to him. "Sit down, sweetheart," he said quietly. The man with the gray beard set down what he was working on. He was quiet, but alert. They sat. Cole stood just behind Mia, with his arms loose at his sides. The older man folded his hands on the table. "My name is Frank," he said. "Frank Dalton. Retired going on 3 years now." He nodded toward the other man. "That is Ray. We both worked alongside your father during the Harlan Creek response." Mia leaned forward slightly. "Did you know him well?" Frank nodded slowly. "Well enough to say he was one of the best volunteers I ever worked with. Calm under pressure. Never asked anyone to do something he would not do himself." He paused. "The kind of man you want beside you when things go wrong." "What happened to him?" Mia asked. Frank looked at Cole briefly, then back at Mia. After the fire was contained, most folks moved on. But your father did not. He kept asking questions about how the fire spread the way it did, the direction it moved, the speed. He thought some things did not add up. Ray spoke for the first time. His voice was low and even. The official report said the fire started from a power line. Dry season, high wind, nothing unusual. He rubbed the back of his neck. But Daniel pulled old weather records, spoke to people in the valley. He believed the warnings that came in before the fire were ignored, that somebody got notified and did nothing. The station was quiet, except for the hum of a small fan on the shelf above them. He came to me about a month before he disappeared, Frank said. He looked down at his folded hands. Told me he had found something. Documents, records, I do not know exactly what. But he was nervous, more nervous than I had ever seen him. Frank paused. He said he was not going to keep the records at home, said it was not safe. Mia went very still. Frank looked at her gently. He told me if anything ever happened to him, the records would still be out there somewhere, hidden somewhere safe. He shook his head slowly. I should have pushed him harder to go to somebody with what he found. I did not, and I have regretted it every day since. The afternoon sun was still brutal when Cole and Mia stepped back outside. Frank had given them a name. A small hardware store on the edge of town where Daniel had sometimes picked up supplies. The owner had known him. It was not much, but it was something. They walked down the main road together. The town was quiet in the way that desert towns get quiet during the hottest part of the day. Most people stayed inside. Blinds were drawn. A dog lay flat in the shade of a porch, not even lifting its head as they passed. Mia walked close to Cole without saying much. She was thinking. He could tell by the way she held her chin slightly down, and her eyes moved without really looking at anything. He let her think. They were halfway down the block when Cole noticed an older woman standing in her front yard. She was small and thin, wearing a wide sun hat, and she was struggling. A large bag of potting soil had fallen off her porch step and split open at the bottom. She was trying to scoop the loose dirt back with her hands, but it kept spilling through her fingers faster than she could gather it. Her knees were shaking with the effort of bending that low. Cole stopped walking. He crossed the yard without saying anything to Mia. He crouched beside the woman, picked up the torn bag with both hands, and folded the ripped edge over on itself to hold it closed. The woman startled. She looked up at him, and her eyes went wide for just a second. Cole knew that look. He had seen it 1,000 times. "I have got it," he said simply. His voice was calm. He carried the bag up the porch steps and set it against the wall where it would not tip. Then he came back down and picked up the small hand shovel that had rolled under the bottom step. "Where do you want the rest?" he asked. The woman stared at him for a moment. Then something in her settled. "The big pot by the door," she said quietly. "I have been trying to replant that rose bush for a week." It took Cole less than 5 minutes. He filled the pot, pressed the soil down, and placed the small rose bush inside. When he was done, he wiped his hands on the side of his jeans and walked back down the steps. "Thank you," the woman said. She was watching him with a different kind of look now. Not scared, just surprised. The kind of surprise that comes from being wrong about something. Cole just nodded and walked back to where Mia was standing on the sidewalk. Mia had not moved. She had watched the whole thing. They kept walking. A block later, they passed a man sitting on the tailgate of an old pickup truck, staring at a flat tire with the expression of someone who had already decided the day was ruined. His spare was out, but the jack beneath the truck was old, and the handle was bent at a bad angle. Cole slowed. He looked at the man. He looked at the jack. "You want a hand?" Cole asked. The man blinked. He was maybe 60, with a deep tan and grease-stained work gloves hanging from his belt. He looked at Cole the way most people did at first. He took in the vest, the tattoos, the size of him. Then he looked at the bent jack and back at Cole. "Yeah," he said. "Actually, yeah, I would." It took them about 15 minutes. Cole worked the jack loose and used a rock and the weight of his boot to correct the bent angle just enough to get it working. Mia sat on the curb and watched. When the tire was changed, the man shook Cole's hand and said, "Thank you twice." Cole said nothing, just picked up Mia's backpack from the curb and handed it to her. They walked on. After a while, Mia looked up at him. The sun was lower now, throwing long shadows across the road. "You do that a lot, don't you?" she said. It was not really a question. Cole glanced down at her. "Do what?" "Help people." She said it simply, like it was just something she had noticed the way you notice the color of a door or the sound of a bird. "You just do it. You do not wait to be asked." Cole did not answer right away. He kept walking, his eyes on the road ahead. "Somebody has to," he said finally. Mia was quiet for a few steps. Then she said, "I think you are a good person, Cole." He stopped walking. It was not a big sentence, 8 words, but something about the way she said it, with no hesitation and no doubt, made it land somewhere deep inside him. He turned and looked at her. She was looking back up at him with calm, steady eyes. She meant every word. There was nothing complicated about it to her. She had watched him and decided. Cole looked away. His jaw was tight. He had spent a long time collecting proof that he was not a good person. Old choices, old damage, things he had done that he could not undo no matter how many strangers he helped along the road. The vest on his back meant something to people, and not always something clean. He had told himself for years that was just how it was. But this little girl, who had crossed miles of desert alone and watched her family fall apart and still kept moving, was standing on a cracked sidewalk in the middle of nowhere, telling him she believed in him. And he did not know what to do with that. They reached the hardware store 20 minutes later. It was a small building with a faded green sign above the door and a screen door that squeaked when Cole pushed it open. The inside smelled like motor oil and sawdust. Old shelves ran from floor to ceiling, packed with tools and bolts and plastic bins sorted by size. The owner was a heavyset man named Roy, who recognized Daniel's name right away. His face did something complicated when Cole said it. Not quite grief, more like guilt. "I heard he went missing," Roy said. He leaned on the counter with both forearms. "Good man. Helped me load stock one afternoon without me even asking." Cole felt Mia look up at him when Roy said that. Roy did not have much, but he remembered Daniel mentioning an old fire station outside of town that had been converted into a records building. Retired firefighters used it to store old incident logs and rescue documents. Nobody official ran it anymore. Just Frank's old crew, keeping things organized out of habit and respect. "Frank Dalton knows the place," Roy said. "He has a key." They went back to Frank. The old firefighter drove them out himself, 30 minutes down a dusty road that turned from pavement to packed dirt near the end. The building was low and wide, made of concrete block, with a metal roof that ticked and popped in the afternoon heat. Frank unlocked the side door and flipped on the overhead light. It was a single large room. Metal shelves filled every wall. Cardboard boxes were stacked in rows, each one labeled by year and region in faded marker. Filing cabinets lined the far end. Wildfire records would be over here, Frank said, moving towards the left side of the room. His voice was steady but quiet, like he was walking somewhere serious. Cole looked around. There were years of history in this room, hundreds of reports, hundreds of incidents. "What year did the fire happen?" Cole asked. Mia answered without hesitating. 7 years ago. My mama told me. She said Daddy came home different after that one. Frank nodded and pulled a box from the third shelf. Then another. He set them on a long table in the center of the room and pulled the lids off. Cole and Mia sat down. Frank stood nearby and helped them sort through the pages. It was slow work: incident reports, personnel logs, rescue timelines. Most of it was dry and hard to read, full of codes and shorthand that meant nothing without context. But Cole was patient. He read each page carefully. Mia sorted papers into small piles, organizing them by date the way Cole showed her. They had been at it for almost an hour when Cole pulled a folder from the bottom of the second box. It was thicker than the others. The label on the tab said, "Multi-Unit Response, Route 9 Corridor." August. Cole opened it. The first few pages were standard: crew assignments, equipment logs. Then he turned to a section marked Secondary Rescues, Non-Fire-Related Incidents During Active Deployment. He almost skipped past it, but one entry caught his eye. He read it once, then he read it again. His hands stopped moving. The report described a motorcycle accident on the highway running parallel to the fire corridor. A rider had gone down when the smoke thickened and visibility dropped to near zero. The bike had caught fire. The rider was trapped and unconscious. 2 volunteer firefighters had pulled him out before the fuel tank went. One of the names listed in the report was Daniel Reyes. Cole sat very still. He remembered that day. He remembered waking up in the hospital with burns on his left arm and no memory of how he got out. The doctors told him someone pulled him free. He had asked who. Nobody ever gave him a name. He had carried that question for 7 years. He looked down at the paper in his hands. Daniel Reyes. The man they were searching for had been the one who saved his life. The man Mia crossed the desert to find had once reached into a burning wreck and pulled Cole Walker out. Cole pressed his hand flat against the table. He breathed slowly. He had not known. But somehow, it had always been leading here. Cole did not move for a long moment. He just sat there with the paper in his hands, and the overhead light buzzing quietly above him. The room felt smaller somehow, like the walls had shifted a few inches closer without him noticing. Frank looked over and saw Cole's face. He did not say anything. He just waited. Maya looked up from her pile of papers. "Cole, did you find something?" Cole cleared his throat. "Yeah," he said. His voice came out rougher than he meant it to. "I found something." He turned the folder toward her and pointed to the name. Mia read it slowly, moving her lips a little the way kids do when they are concentrating hard. "That is my daddy's name," she said. "I know." Cole set the folder down flat on the table. He pressed both palms against it like he needed to feel something solid underneath him. "He was there the day I had my accident. 7 years ago, he was one of the men who pulled me out of the fire." Mia stared at him. "He saved my life," Cole said simply. "I never knew who did it. I asked the hospital. I asked around after. Nobody ever told me his name." He paused. "Now I know." The room was very quiet. The metal roof ticked once in the heat outside. Mia reached over and put her small hand on top of Cole's. She did not say anything. She did not have to. That little hand, warm and steady, said more than words could have. Cole looked at her. This 8-year-old girl who had crossed miles of burning desert alone, carrying a photograph and a letter and a kind of hope that most grown people had stopped believing in a long time ago. Her father had once saved a stranger's life without ever knowing his name. And now that stranger was sitting in a dusty records room trying to bring him home. Cole straightened up in his chair. Something had settled in his chest. Not grief exactly, not guilt either. It was more like purpose, clean and certain, the way a road looks after the rain washes the dust off it. He was going to find Daniel Reyes, not just for Mia, for all of it, for every second of the 7 years he had lived, because a volunteer firefighter ran toward a burning wreck instead of away from it. "All right," Cole said. "Let us keep going." Frank pulled the second box closer, and they went back to work. It took another 20 minutes before Cole found the next piece. It was tucked inside a maintenance log near the bottom of the pile. Not an official report, just a handwritten note on plain paper, folded once and slipped between 2 other documents like someone had placed it there carefully, wanting it to stay hidden, but not wanting it to disappear entirely. Cole unfolded it. The handwriting was small and neat, a list of dates and initials. Then a short paragraph at the bottom that described a fire lookout cabin located northeast of the main ridge, about 4 miles past the old Route 9 mile marker. The note said the cabin had been used as a remote monitoring post before the county shut down the program. Access road was unpaved, mostly unknown to people outside the old fire crew. At the bottom of the note, someone had written a single line in different ink. Darker, added later. It read, "Safest place I know. Nobody looks there." Cole turned the note over. On the back, in the same darker ink, was a small hand-drawn map, rough but readable, a road, a ridgeline, a small square marked with an X. Cole held it up so Frank could see. Frank looked at it for a long moment. His jaw tightened. "I know that cabin," he said quietly. "I did not think anyone remembered it was still standing." Mia leaned in close to look at the map. Her eyes moved carefully over the lines. Then she looked up at Cole. "Is that where he is?" she asked. Cole folded the note carefully and placed it in his jacket pocket. "Only one way to find out," he said. The road ended about 2 miles before the cabin did. Cole pulled the motorcycle off the cracked asphalt and onto a dirt trail that was barely wide enough to call a path. Dry brush scraped against his boots. The sun was lower now, but still mean, pressing down through the thin mountain air like it had something to prove. Mia sat behind him on the bike, her small arms wrapped around his waist. She had been quiet for most of the ride up the ridge. The kind of quiet that was not peaceful. The kind that meant something was turning over and over inside her. Cole felt her grip tighten as the trail got rougher. He slowed down and found a flat spot near a cluster of scrubby pines. He cut the engine. The silence that followed was big and open, filled only with the sound of wind moving through dry grass. "We walk from here," he said. Mia climbed off the bike carefully. She adjusted the straps of her small backpack and looked up at the ridge ahead. The trail curved up through loose rock and pale dirt. Somewhere above them, hidden behind the tree line, was the cabin marked on Daniel's map. They started walking. Cole kept his pace slow, matching hers. The ground was uneven. Mia picked her way over the rocks without complaining. She had strong legs for an 8-year-old. She had already proven that back in the desert. After a while, she spoke. "What if he does not want to see me?" Cole looked over at her. What makes you think that? Mia kept her eyes on the ground. He left. He has been gone a really long time. She paused. Maybe he stopped wanting to come back. Cole was quiet for a moment. He chose his next words carefully. When I was hiding from people, he said, it was not because I stopped caring about them. It was because I thought staying away was safer for everybody. He stepped over a loose rock. Sometimes people do the wrong thing for the right reason. Mia thought about that. Do you think that is what he did? I think your daddy found out something dangerous, Cole said. And I think he made a decision to protect you the only way he knew how. Even if it hurt you both. Her chin wobbled a little. It did hurt. I know it did. Cole stopped walking. He crouched down so they were eye level. But you crossed a desert to find him. You did not give up on him. And I do not think he gave up on you either. That kind of love does not go away. Mia wiped her eye with the back of her hand. Then she straightened up, squared her little shoulders, and started walking again. Cole stood and followed her. The trail curved one more time, and then flattened out onto a small clearing. And there it was. The cabin was old. The wood had gone gray from years of sun and cold, a rusted metal roof. One window facing the valley below, its glass dusty but unbroken. A single step up to a narrow door that was pulled almost shut but not latched. Smoke drifted from a small pipe chimney, thin and pale against the blue sky. Someone was inside. Mia stopped. She stood at the edge of the clearing and stared at the cabin door. Her whole body had gone still. Cole did not push her. He just stood a step behind her and waited. Then a shadow moved behind the window glass. The door opened. A man stood in the doorway. He was lean and weathered, older than his years showed. His eyes swept the clearing out of habit, the cautious scan of someone who had been watching for danger for a long time. Then those eyes found Mia. Everything stopped. The man's face broke open. Not slowly. All at once, like something inside him had been holding its shape by sheer force, and simply could not hold any more. Mia, he breathed. She ran. She crossed the clearing in a dead sprint, her backpack bouncing, her arms reaching forward, and she hit her father so hard that Daniel staggered back a full step. He caught her. He wrapped both arms around her and pulled her in tight, his face pressed against the top of her head, his shoulders shaking. "Daddy," she said. Just that word, muffled against his chest. "I know, baby," he said. I know. I am so sorry." Cole stood at the edge of the clearing and watched. He did not move closer. This moment was not his. It belonged to the two of them. He pulled his jacket a little tighter and looked out over the valley below, giving them the space they needed. His jaw was set. His eyes were bright. After a long while, Daniel pulled back just enough to look at his daughter's face. His hands cupped her cheeks gently. His eyes moved over every detail of her, like he was making sure she was real. "Let me look at you," he whispered. His voice was rough. "You got taller." Mia let out a sound that was half laugh and half sob. "You have been gone a really long time, Daddy." "I know." His voice broke on those two words. "I know I have. Everyone said you were not coming back." She looked straight at him. "I never believed them." Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, they were wet. "You should not have had to carry that, not alone. Never alone." He pulled her close again and rested his chin on top of her head. "I never left you because I wanted to. You have to know that. I need you to know that more than anything." Mia pressed her face into his shoulder. Then why did you go? Daniel looked up. He noticed Cole for the first time. The big man in the leather vest standing at the edge of the clearing, giving them space but watching carefully. Daniel straightened slightly, not with fear, more like recognition. Cole gave a single slow nod. Daniel held Mia a little tighter and spoke quietly into her hair. There were people, he said. Bad people who did not want the truth told about the fire. He paused, searching for words she could understand. I found out things that made them angry, things that could hurt them. And I got scared that if I stayed near you, those people would come after you instead of me. Mia pulled back and looked up at him. So you hid to keep me safe. That was what I told myself, Daniel said. His voice dropped. But hiding for that long starts to feel like something else. It starts to feel like giving up. His jaw tightened. I am not proud of how long I stayed away, Mia. I am not. Cole finally crossed the clearing. He moved slowly, not wanting to break anything in that moment. He stopped a few feet away and looked at Daniel. My name is Cole Walker, he said. Daniel studied him. I know who you are. Cole raised an eyebrow. She told you? The letter, Daniel said quietly. Cole nodded. There was a lot in that single word, a whole story exchanged without explaining it out loud. He looked over at Mia, then back at Daniel. She walked a long way to find you, Cole said. Desert heat, alone, 8 years old. Daniel's face tightened with pain. I know. The second I saw her, I knew. She did not give up on you, Cole said. His voice was steady and plain. Not even a little. Daniel stared at his daughter. Mia had her arms still looped around his waist, her head resting against his side, listening without trying to hide that she was listening. Cole spoke again. Hiding kept her physically safe. I get that. You were trying to protect her. He paused. But she has been out there without her father for months. That kind of thing leaves a mark too, just a different kind. Daniel was quiet. The people who want this buried, Cole continued, they are counting on you staying scared. They are counting on you staying gone. Every day you stay hidden, they win. And Mia keeps losing. Daniel looked down at his daughter's face. Mia looked back up at him. She did not say anything. She did not need to. Daniel exhaled slowly. It was a long breath, the kind that carries something heavy out with it. I have evidence, he said quietly. Or I did. Notes, records, things I copied before I ran. He rubbed the back of his neck. I do not even know if it is enough anymore. Let me worry about that, Cole said. Daniel looked at him for a long moment. Something shifted behind his eyes. The fear was still there, but something else was pushing up through it now. He gave one slow nod. Okay, he said. Okay, I will come home. Daniel moved inside the cabin first. Cole followed, and Mia stayed close to her father's side, her fingers laced through his like she was afraid he might disappear again if she let go. The cabin was small and dim. A single window let in a blade of afternoon light. There was a cot in the corner, a folding table, and a metal box sitting on a wooden shelf above the door. The air smelled like dust and old wood, and something faintly smoky, like the walls had absorbed years of wildfire seasons. Daniel pulled the metal box down from the shelf. It was dented on one side and had a small padlock on the front. He reached into the collar of his shirt and pulled out a key on a cord. His hands moved carefully as he opened it. Inside were papers, a lot of them. Some folded, some in small plastic sleeves. There were photographs, too. Printed ones, the kind you get from a copy machine, not crisp but readable. Cole leaned in. He did not touch anything yet. "This started about 3 weeks before the fire," Daniel said. He spread a few of the papers flat on the table. "I was working a prevention sweep in the ridge area. We were checking fuel load, dead brush, that kind of thing. Standard work." He pointed to one of the papers. "We flagged the East Corridor as critical. It was dangerously dry. Wind conditions that season were bad. We wrote up a formal warning and sent it up the chain." Cole studied the paper. It was a report, handwritten notes in the margins, dates circled. "Nothing happened," Daniel said. "No crews came out to clear it. No controlled burns. Nothing." He pulled out a second sheet. "So I followed up, and then I found out why the corridor was not cleared." He paused. He glanced down at Mia for a second. Mia looked back at him. "You can say it, Daddy. I am not little." The corner of Daniel's mouth moved. Not quite a smile, but close. "The land running along that corridor had a development deal attached to it. A big one. A man named Voss had plans to build something out there. Resort properties. Long-term lease agreements. If crews cleared the brush the right way, it would have delayed his permits by months." Daniel's voice stayed flat. "So the clearing order was quietly shelved. Paperwork got lost. My warning report got buried." Cole straightened up slowly. "The fire started in the East Corridor," Daniel said, "exactly where we flagged it." The cabin was quiet for a moment. The afternoon light shifted through the window and caught the dust in the air. "I pulled what I could before they knew I had it," Daniel continued. He gestured to the box. "Copies of the original warning report. Internal memos showing the clearing order was canceled. A name on one of the memos connecting Voss directly to the decision." He pressed his fingers down on the edge of the table. Enough to ask serious questions. Maybe enough to get real answers. Cole looked at the papers again. He thought carefully. "This is real," he said. It was not a question. "It is real," Daniel said. Cole picked up the photograph of the memo. He read it slowly. Then he set it down and looked at Daniel. "You have been sitting on this alone for months," Cole said. "I thought if I brought it forward too soon, they would destroy it, or worse." Daniel looked at Mia. "I could not risk her." Mia tugged gently on her father's hand. "But you have Cole now," she said. Her voice was simple and certain, the way only a child can say something like that. Both men looked at her. Cole nodded once. He reached over and carefully began returning the papers to the metal box. Each one handled like it mattered, because it did. "Pack what you need," Cole said to Daniel. His voice was steady and clear. "We are heading back to town. Together." He closed the lid of the box. It is time people heard the truth. Daniel picked up the box and held it close. He reached out and put his other arm around Mia. They walked out of the cabin and into the light. The drive back down the mountain was quiet. Cole rode ahead on his motorcycle, and Daniel drove a rusted pickup truck he had kept hidden behind the cabin under a tarp. Mia sat beside her father in the truck, the metal box on her lap, both hands resting on top of it like she was guarding something precious. The road was narrow and dusty. The sun had dropped lower in the sky, and the desert stretched out wide and gold on both sides of them. It should have felt like a victory. It almost did. They reached the edge of town, just as the last orange light was fading. Cole pulled into the parking lot of the small motel where they had stopped the night before. He cut his engine and waited for the truck to roll in beside him. He had a contact, a former firefighter named Frank Dalton, who knew people in the county. Frank had agreed to meet them and help figure out who to bring the evidence to. But when Frank met them in the parking lot, his face was wrong. He was not standing the way a man stands when he has good news. "Frank," Cole said. Frank looked at Daniel, then at the box. "Someone got into the records office last night," Frank said. His voice was low and heavy. The paper copies I had been holding, backup documents from the original prevention sweep, witness statements I collected last year from the crew members. He stopped. He pressed his lips together. "They are gone. All of it. Shredded or taken, we do not know which." The parking lot felt very still. Daniel stood with the metal box in his hands. His face went pale. His jaw tightened. "The box," Cole said quickly. "We still have what Daniel kept." Frank nodded slowly. "That helps. But without the corroborating documents, without the backup records, a lawyer is going to have a harder time building a case. The other side will say the papers in that box are unverifiable. They will question the chain of custody. They will drag it out." He exhaled. "Voss has resources. He has people. He has been doing this a long time." Daniel set the box down on the hood of the truck. He pressed both hands flat against the metal and looked down. He did not say anything for a long moment. Then he said, very quietly, "I should have moved faster." "Daniel?" Frank started. "No." Daniel's voice was steady but tight. "I sat in that cabin for months thinking I was protecting her, thinking I was being careful, and the whole time they were out there covering their tracks and I was doing nothing." He looked up. His eyes were red at the edges. "I put everything on that box, and now it might not be enough." He looked over at Mia, who was standing a few feet away. "I left my daughter alone. I let her walk across a desert, and I still could not fix it." Mia stepped toward him. "Daddy." "Give me a second, baby," Daniel said softly. He turned away and walked a few steps from the group, his hands on the back of his neck, his shoulders pulled up tight. Cole watched him. He watched the way Daniel stood in the dim parking lot light, a man who had tried everything he knew and still felt like he had come up short. Cole recognized that feeling. He had worn it for years. He walked slowly away from the group and stopped near the edge of the lot, close to where his motorcycle was parked. He stood there in the dark, with his arms crossed. Frank came up beside him. "You do not look good either," Frank said. "I pulled them into this," Cole said, his voice low. "Both of them. I came up that mountain and I told him it was time to come back. I told him we would handle it." He looked down at the ground. "Maybe I made it worse. Maybe they were safer before I showed up." Frank was quiet. "I might need to step back," Cole said, "for their sake, before I do more damage." Neither of them noticed Mia standing just a few feet behind them, close enough to hear every word. The morning came in slow and gray. Cole had not slept much. He sat outside on the concrete curb in front of his motel room door, a cup of gas station coffee going cold in his hands. The parking lot was empty and quiet. The sky above the desert was pale, that early hour before the sun had fully committed to showing up. He stared at his motorcycle. It would be so easy. That was the thing that bothered him most. He could throw one leg over that seat, turn the key, and be 200 miles away before Daniel and Mia even woke up. He had done it before. Left places before things got worse, before the people near him started paying for standing close to him. He turned the coffee cup in his hands. He thought about the records office. Shredded. Taken. Gone. He thought about Daniel pressing his hands flat against that metal box like he was trying to hold himself together through it. He thought about what Frank said. Voss has resources. He has people. He has been doing this a long time. Cole had exactly one motorcycle, a leather vest, and a lifetime of people deciding he was someone to avoid. What had he actually brought to this situation? He heard the soft crunch of small shoes on gravel. He did not have to look up to know who it was. Mia came around the side of the truck in her oversized blue jacket, the one Daniel had found for her in the cabin. Her hair was messy from sleep. She was holding a small bag of crackers from the vending machine, and she sat down on the curb beside him without asking permission. She did not say anything at first. She just opened the crackers and held the bag out toward him. Cole took one. He did not know why. They sat together in the gray morning quiet for a moment. Then Mia said, "I heard you last night." Cole looked over at her. Her eyes were fixed on the parking lot ahead. She was calm. Not angry, just steady in that way she had. That way that made her seem older than 8 years old. "Mia," he started. "You said you might need to leave," she said, "because you were afraid you were making things worse." Cole did not answer. Mia pulled her knees up to her chest. "Do you remember what you told me? When I said I was scared that we would not find my dad in time?" He remembered. They had been sitting outside a gas station 2 towns back. She had gone very quiet, and he had asked her what was wrong. "You said being brave does not mean you are never scared," Mia continued. "You said it means you help anyway." The words landed on him like a hand on the shoulder. He looked down at the cold coffee in his hands. "That is different," he said quietly. "How?" she asked. She turned and looked up at him. There was no accusation in her face. Just a genuine, open question. The kind only a child can ask without meaning to cut someone down with it. Cole opened his mouth. Then he closed it again, because he did not have a good answer. He had told her the truth that night. He had believed it when he said it. And now here it was, coming back to him in the voice of an 8-year-old eating crackers on a motel curb. The outcome was uncertain. It had always been uncertain. That had never stopped being true. But uncertain was not the same as impossible. He sat with that for a long moment. The sun was starting to push up over the edge of the desert now, painting the bottom of the sky a soft, warm pink. He set down the coffee cup. "Okay," he said. Mia looked at him. "I am not leaving," he said, "and I am not going to fight this alone either." He stood up slowly, brushing dust from his jeans. "There are people we helped getting here. People who know pieces of this. Frank, the old crew members, the families." He looked down at her. "It is time to call them in." They drove back into town just after noon. The sun was full and heavy by then, pressing down on the desert like it had something to prove. Heat rolled off the asphalt in slow waves. The old buildings along the main street looked small and tired under all that brightness. Cole rode ahead on his motorcycle. Daniel drove the truck with Mia in the passenger seat. She had her window down, and her arms stretched out into the hot wind, her fingers spread wide like she was feeling the air move through them. The first stop was Frank Dalton's house. Frank lived at the end of a short dirt road on the edge of town. His yard was neat and dry. An old weather vane shaped like a rooster sat on top of the wooden fence, spinning slowly in the desert breeze. Cole knocked on the door twice before Frank appeared, holding a dish towel and squinting against the sun. When Frank saw Daniel standing behind Cole, he went completely still. Then he stepped off the porch and walked straight toward him. He did not say anything. He just gripped Daniel's shoulder with one hand, firm and steady, the way men do when words are not enough. "You are alive," Frank said. "I am," Daniel said quietly. Frank cleared his throat and looked at the ground for a moment. Then he looked up and nodded once, like a decision had just been made. "Then we have got work to do." They sat around Frank's kitchen table. Frank made coffee and put out a plate of plain cookies without asking if anyone wanted them. Mia took 2 without hesitation. Cole spread Daniel's handwritten notes across the table, the ones they still had, the copies Daniel had kept folded inside the cabin wall. Frank studied each page carefully. His reading glasses sat low on his nose, and his mouth pressed into a firm line as he worked through it. "Voss destroyed the main records," Cole said. "Whatever was in that box is gone, so we need to build it back from something else." Frank did not look up right away. He turned one page slowly. "There were other people there that summer," he said. "People who were on those roads before the fire jumped the ridge. Families who filed reports that got buried. Old crew members who were pulled off the line before the worst of it hit." "Do you know where they are?" Daniel asked. "Some of them." Frank finally looked up. "There is a woman named Rosa Vargas. She lost her house and she made a lot of noise about it afterward. Someone talked her out of pushing further. But she kept her own records. She told me that once, a while back, that she had a whole folder she never threw away." Cole pulled out a piece of paper and wrote the name down. Frank gave them 4 other names. A retired crew captain named Harold Green, who had moved to a town 40 miles east. 2 brothers who had been volunteer drivers that season. A local woman who had worked for the county office and quit the same week the investigation was closed. Cole wrote every name down. They spent the rest of the afternoon driving. Rosa Vargas answered her door with sunflower seeds in her hand and suspicion on her face. But when Daniel introduced himself and Frank stepped up behind Cole, her expression softened. She recognized Frank immediately. She opened the door wider and let them in without another word. Her folder was real. It was a thick stack of paper, held together with 2 rubber bands, tucked inside a plastic box on the shelf above her washing machine. She pulled it out carefully, like it was something she had protected for a long time without being entirely sure why. "I always thought someone would come eventually," she said. Harold Green remembered the day he and his crew were pulled back. He had written the order down in a personal log he still kept in a green binder on his bookshelf. By evening, they had more than Cole expected. Witness names, dates, timelines that matched what Daniel already knew. The story was still there. It had just been scattered across 10 different kitchens and forgotten shelves, waiting for someone to come collect it. By the next morning, Frank's kitchen had turned into something else entirely. The table was covered. Papers spread from one end to the other. Photographs were laid out in rows. Handwritten notes sat in small stacks beside printed pages and folded maps. 2 extra chairs had been pulled in from the back room, and someone had dragged in a folding table from the garage to hold the overflow. Cole stood at the center of it all, studying each piece carefully. He had not slept much. He rarely did when something important needed solving. Instead, he had spent the early hours organizing what they had collected, sorting everything by date and location, building a line from one point to the next, the way you lay out stones to cross a river. Daniel sat beside him. His eyes were tired but focused. He picked up each document that Cole passed to him, read it quietly, and placed it where it belonged. Mia sat at the corner of the table with a notebook and a pencil. Nobody asked her to help. She just started doing it. She wrote down names in careful block letters. She matched photographs to dates. When she found 2 pieces that connected, she would hold them up and say, "These go together." And she was almost always right. Frank kept the coffee coming. Rosa Vargas arrived just after 8 with her plastic box tucked under her arm and a second folder she had found in her closet the night before. She set everything on the table, pulled out a chair, and got to work without any announcement. Harold Green drove in from 40 miles east before noon. He brought his green binder and a box of old crew photographs. Some of the photos showed the fire line. Some showed the roads. One showed a row of vehicles parked outside a command station on the morning of the worst day. Harold pointed to a white truck in the background of that photo and said, "That truck did not belong to any crew. I asked about it that morning. Nobody gave me an answer." Cole wrote that down. The two brothers came in the early afternoon. They were quiet men with sun-dark faces and careful eyes. They had been volunteer drivers that season and remembered the roads better than almost anyone. They drew out the routes from memory on a blank piece of paper, marking where the detours had been set up and where the barriers had gone down too early. "These roads should have stayed closed," one of the brothers said. "We were told they were clear. They were not clear." The woman who had worked for the county office came last. Her name was Linda Marsh. She was small and precise, and she brought nothing with her except her memory. But her memory was sharp. She remembered file numbers. She remembered the names of the people who signed off on the investigation report. She remembered the date the file was officially closed, and the name of the man who had called her office the day before it happened to ask if any copies had been made. That name was Ethan Voss. Cole looked at Daniel when she said it. Daniel nodded slowly. He already knew. But hearing it from someone else, someone with no connection to him, made the weight of it settle differently in the room. By late afternoon, Frank's kitchen was full of people who had each been carrying a small piece of the same story without knowing the others existed. Cole stood back and looked at everything spread across the table. Names, dates, routes, photographs, signed orders, witness accounts written in different handwriting on different kinds of paper, from different years, from different towns. Separately, each piece looked like nothing much. Together they told a story that was impossible to ignore. "We have enough," Daniel said quietly. Cole looked at him. Having enough is one thing. The way we present this matters. It has to be organized, clear, and connected so tight that no one can pull one thread out and make the rest of it fall apart. Frank set down his coffee cup and looked at the table. "Then that is what we do next," he said. They chose the town hall. It was not a fancy building. The paint on the outside was faded from years of desert sun, and the wooden floors inside creaked when you walked across them. But it held enough chairs, and it sat at the center of town where everyone could find it. Frank made a few phone calls. Word spread the way it always does in small towns, quietly at first, and then all at once. By the time Cole and Daniel arrived that evening, the parking lot was full. Cole carried 2 boxes. Daniel carried 1. Mia walked between them, holding the old photograph against her chest with both hands. Inside, every chair was taken. People stood along the walls. Some faces Cole recognized from the past few days. Rosa was there, seated near the front with her plastic box on her lap. Harold sat beside her with his green binder open. The 2 brothers stood near the side door. Linda Marsh sat in the second row with her hands folded and her eyes steady. The rest were strangers to Cole. Families, farmers, a few men in work shirts who looked like they had come straight from a job. An older woman near the back who kept pressing a tissue to her eyes before anything had even started. Cole set the boxes down on the long table at the front of the room. He was not a man who liked crowds. He was not a man who liked attention. But he stood there in his leather vest with his arms at his sides, and he looked out at the room, and he did not flinch. Daniel stepped up beside him. For a moment, he said nothing. He looked at the room the way a man looks at something he thought he had lost forever. His jaw was tight. His eyes were red at the edges. Then he started talking. He told them everything. He told them about the morning the fire broke out, and the warnings that came in hours before the evacuation order was given. He told them about the roads that should have stayed closed and the calls he made that nobody returned. He told them about the evidence he found after the fire was out, the documents that showed someone had seen the weather reports, had known the risk, and had stayed quiet because slowing things down would have cost money and delayed a land deal that Ethan Voss needed to close before the end of the quarter. He told them about the night he realized he was being watched, about the fear of bringing that danger to Mia's door. His voice broke once, just once, when he talked about leaving. "I thought staying away was protecting her," he said, "but I know now that there is no protection worth giving your child a life without her father in it." Mia sat in the front row. She did not look away from him once. Cole spread the documents across the table as Daniel spoke. Photographs, signed orders, the witness accounts in their different handwriting. Linda Marsh stood when Daniel reached the part about the investigation being closed, and she confirmed the date and the name, clearly and without hesitation. Ethan Voss. The name sat heavy in the room. Over the following days, those documents were submitted to the county. State investigators arrived. The case was reopened. Reporters came. The story moved quickly once the truth had faces and dates and paper behind it. 3 weeks later, Daniel Reyes was officially cleared of any connection to the wildfire disaster. Ethan Voss was placed under formal investigation. His land dealings were frozen. The people who had signed off on the false report were named publicly. For the first time, the families who had lost homes and livelihoods and pieces of their lives had answers. Not perfect answers, but real ones. Cole sat outside Frank's house the evening the clearance came through. The desert was going pink and orange at the edges, the way it does when the sun finally decides to let go of the day. Daniel came out and sat beside him. Neither of them said anything for a long time. Then Cole looked at the horizon and felt something shift quietly inside his chest. The fight had been worth it. Not because the right people got punished, because a little girl finally had her father back. Word travels fast in a small town, faster than a desert wind, faster than a brush fire, faster than anything Cole had ever seen. Within days of the clearance, people who had never spoken to Cole before were stopping him on the street. A man outside the hardware store reached out and shook his hand without saying a word, just nodded once with steady eyes. A woman at the diner refilled his coffee 3 times and refused to take a single dollar when he tried to pay. The 2 brothers who had brought the signed statements found him at Frank's house one afternoon and clapped him on the shoulder like they had known him for years. Cole did not quite know what to do with any of it. He was not used to being looked at with warmth. He was used to being looked at with suspicion. He knew how to handle crossed arms and sideways glances. He did not know how to handle a town that had decided he was one of them. A reporter asked him for an interview. Cole said no. She ran the story anyway. She described him as the man who stopped when no one else did. She wrote about Mia, about Daniel, about the drive across the desert and the town hall, and the people who came together once someone gave them a reason to. She did not call him dangerous. She did not mention his vest or his past, or the name of the club stitched on the back of his jacket. She just called him Cole. Frank showed him the article one morning over coffee. Cole read it once. Then he set it down on the table and stared at his hands for a moment. "How does it feel?" Frank asked. Cole thought about that for a few seconds. "Strange," he said, "but not bad." Frank smiled. That is usually how good things start. Mia had stuck close to Daniel since the night of the town hall. That was right. That was how it should be. Cole watched them from a quiet distance, the way a man watches something he helped build but does not need to own. Father and daughter walking the road out front together in the early morning, Daniel teaching her the names of the desert plants, Mia talking fast and pointing at things and laughing at her own jokes, the way kids do when they finally feel safe enough to just be kids again. It filled something in Cole's chest that he had not known was empty. But he knew his place. He had done what he came to do. The truth was out. Daniel was free. Mia had her father back. The road was still out there, and the road had always been where Cole belonged. He started packing up his things on a Tuesday morning. It did not take long. He had never been a man who carried much. A change of clothes, his tools, the small things that had traveled with him so long they felt like old friends. He checked over his motorcycle the way he always did before a long ride, running his hands along the engine, making sure everything was where it should be. He planned to say goodbye after lunch. Clean and simple. He would hug Mia, shake Daniel's hand, tell Frank to look after himself. Then he would point his front wheel toward the highway and let the desert take him back. That was the plan. But when he turned around from the motorcycle, Mia was standing at the edge of the driveway. She was not crying. She was doing that thing she did when she was trying very hard not to cry, where she pressed her lips together tight and looked at something just past the thing she was actually looking at. She had the old photograph in her hand. Cole crouched down so he was at her level. "Hey," he said. She looked at him then. Her eyes were bright and full, and holding something she had not said yet. "Are you leaving?" she asked. Her voice was small, smaller than usual. And Cole felt the question land somewhere deep inside him, right in the center of his chest, like a stone dropping into still water. Cole stayed crouched down, looking at her. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I was thinking it was about time." Mia looked down at the photograph in her hand. She turned it over once, then back again, like she was working something out. Then she looked up at him with those bright, steady eyes. "You can't," she said. Cole tilted his head a little. "Can't?" "Not yet." She swallowed. "Because Dad wants to talk to you. And so do I." He did not argue. He never could argue with her. He had figured that out somewhere around the second day of knowing her. He stood up and followed her back to the porch. Daniel was already there. He was sitting on the top step with a cup of coffee wrapped in both hands, watching the desert stretch out gold and wide in front of them. He looked better than he had when they first found him. The shadows under his eyes were lighter. His shoulders did not carry that same tight, broken weight. He looked like a man who had finally been allowed to breathe again. Cole sat down on the step beside him. Mia settled herself right between them, like it was the most natural thing in the world, crossing her legs and resting her hands in her lap. For a moment no one said anything. The desert was quiet. A dry breeze moved through the brush, and that was all. Then Daniel spoke. "I heard you were packing up," he said. "Just about done," Cole said. Daniel nodded slowly. He stared at his coffee cup for a moment. Then he set it down on the step beside him and turned to look at Cole directly. "I need you to hear something," Daniel said. "And I need you to actually hear it, not just let it go in one ear and disappear." Cole met his eyes. "All right." Daniel took a breath. "You came out here for Mia. You drove across the desert, you sat with her, you earned her trust when she had no reason to give it to anyone. You helped me when I was too broken and too scared to help myself." He paused. "You did not have to do any of that. You had every reason to walk away, and you didn't." Cole opened his mouth, but Daniel held up a hand. "I am not finished," he said. And there was a quiet firmness in his voice that reminded Cole of the man from the letter. The man who had refused to stay quiet about the truth. "You are not just someone who rescued us," Daniel said. "You are part of this family now. That is not something I say lightly. That is something I mean down to the bone." Cole felt the words hit him square in the chest. He did not have a quick answer for that. He did not have any answer at all. He just sat there with the sun warm on his face, and those words settling into him, like water soaking into dry ground. Then Mia leaned against his arm. She did not say anything at first. She just leaned there, small and solid and sure, the way kids do when they want you to know they are not going anywhere. Then she said, real quiet, "You are the person who stopped. Nobody else stopped. Just you." Cole looked down at her. Her eyes were still full, still holding back that tide she had been holding back since she saw him at the motorcycle. But she was smiling now, small and real and certain. "That makes you ours," she said simply. Something shifted in Cole's chest. Something old and guarded and long locked up began, slowly, to loosen. He had spent so many years believing that a man like him did not get to have this, a porch, a family, someone leaning against his arm like he was a safe place. He had told himself the road was enough. He had told himself belonging was for other people. But sitting there between Daniel and Mia, with the desert spread out before them, and the morning quiet around them, Cole understood something new. Maybe he had earned this. Maybe he had always deserved it. He just had not believed it until now. He put his arm around Mia's shoulders. "All right," he said, low and rough and honest. "All right." The desert looked the same from a distance. Same pale sky, same flat stretch of road cutting through the brush like a pale ribbon, same heat rising off the asphalt in slow, lazy waves. Cole had ridden this highway dozens of times since that first day, and it always looked the same from far away. But as he slowed the motorcycle and pulled off the road, he realized it was nothing like the same at all. The old fruit stand was gone. Not torn down, not abandoned, gone and replaced with something entirely different. Cole sat on his idling bike for a moment and just looked at it. A low wooden shelter stood where the rotting stand had been. Clean timber, fresh paint the color of sand. A wide, sloped roof stretched out on both sides, offering real shade, the kind that actually worked against a desert sun. Beneath it sat a row of sturdy benches and a water station with a hand pump built into a stone base. A small garden of desert flowers ran along the front edge. Purple and gold and deep red, tough little things that had no business blooming in that kind of heat, but bloomed anyway. Above the entrance, a simple wooden sign had been mounted between two posts. He cut the engine and walked his bike forward until he could read it. "Rest here. You are not alone." Below those words, carved in smaller letters, "In honor of the firefighters, rescuers, and ordinary people who stopped when it mattered." Cole stood there in the heat and read those words twice. He pulled off his helmet and held it under his arm. He ran a hand over the back of his neck and breathed in the dry desert air. Then he walked forward slowly, boots scuffing on the gravel path that had been laid where bare dirt used to be. Along the inside walls of the shelter, someone had built a low display. Simple wooden frames mounted in a long row. Some held photographs. Some held short handwritten notes. Some held small items, a firefighter's patch, a folded map, a worn work glove laid flat under glass. Cole moved along the row slowly. He recognized some of the faces. Retired firefighters Frank had introduced him to. Families from the town who had lost homes in the fire. People who had shown up at the end when it mattered, because Cole had asked, and they had said yes. Then he reached the end of the row. He stopped. There was a small wooden shelf built into the last section of wall. Not framed behind glass, just an open shelf with a little lip to keep things safe. And on that shelf sat a photograph. He knew the photograph. He had held it himself, carefully, months ago in a hospital room while an 8-year-old girl held her breath and watched him. A faded picture of a man and a woman standing outside a small building in a desert town. Daniel and Sarah, young and squinting into the sun, smiling like the whole future was still ahead of them. The photograph sat propped gently against the back of the shelf. And beside it, pressed close, sat a new picture. Cole leaned in. 3 people stood in front of a porch. The same porch. Daniel's porch, out past the mountains, where the morning light hit the boards just right and made everything look gold. Daniel stood tall on the left. Cole stood on the right, a head taller, arms crossed, wearing that same leather vest. And between them, in the exact middle, stood Mia. She was beaming. Full, bright, no holding back. Both arms stretched up around their shoulders, pulling them toward her like she was afraid one of them might drift away if she let go. Someone had written on the small card propped in front of it. Cole read the words in Mia's careful, looping handwriting. Our family? Old and new. All of it real. Cole heard them before he saw them. Voices, laughter, the soft clinking of metal folding chairs being arranged on gravel. He turned slowly from the shelf and looked toward the open side of the shelter. They were already gathering. Families from town, retired firefighters in pressed shirts with old patches on the sleeves, neighbors who had brought covered dishes and cold drinks in beat-up coolers, children chasing each other between the benches until someone's grandmother called them back. Frank Dalton stood near the water station, talking to a man Cole recognized from the wildfire records, both of them nodding slowly the way old men do when they are remembering something hard. Cole had not expected a crowd. He had come early on purpose. He stepped back from the shelf and tucked himself near the edge of the shelter, arms crossed, watching. That was fine. He was good at watching. Then a small hand grabbed 3 of his fingers and pulled. You were supposed to wait by the road, Mia said, looking up at him with her chin tilted and her eyes doing that thing where she was pretending to be annoyed, but was not even close. I got here early, Cole said. I know, I saw your bike. She tugged his hand once more. Come on, you're not allowed to hide. He let her pull him forward. Daniel was waiting near the center of the shelter, standing beside Frank. He looked different than the man Cole had found in that broken-down lookout cabin. He stood straight now. He looked rested. There was still something careful in his eyes, the way a person looks when they have spent too long watching for trouble. But the fear that used to live there had mostly quieted down. He reached out and shook Cole's hand when he got close, firm and steady. You made it, Daniel said. Told you I would, Cole said. Frank clapped a hand on Cole's shoulder. It was not a light tap. It was the kind of grip that meant something. Big day, Frank said. Cole just nodded. The ceremony was simple. That was the right word for it. A man from the county spoke briefly about community and resilience, words that sounded polished and a little stiff. A few firefighters shared short memories. Frank read a list of names, slow and careful, every one of them honored out loud in the open desert air. People wiped their eyes and did not seem embarrassed about it. Then someone said Mia's name. She walked to the front without hesitating. She was wearing a yellow dress and her good sneakers, and she held a folded piece of paper that she had clearly written on and rewritten because the edges were soft from handling. She unfolded it. She looked at the crowd. Then she looked directly at Cole. A lot of people told me my dad was gone, she said. Her voice was clear and steady. A lot of people thought I was lost. She paused. But I was not lost. I knew where I was going. I just needed someone to help me get there. She glanced down at her paper once, then back up. When Cole found me, everybody saw a scary biker. The patches, the tattoos, the big motorcycle. A few quiet laughs moved through the crowd. But I was on the ground in the heat, and he stopped. He gave me water. He stayed with me. He did not ask me 100 questions or tell me I was being silly. Her voice got a little quieter. He just helped me. And then he kept helping me, even when it got hard, even when it got scary, even when he could have walked away. She folded the paper back up. Everybody saw what he looked like, Mia said. I saw who he was. The crowd was very still. Cole uncrossed his arms. He did not trust himself to speak right then, so he did not try. He just looked at this little girl standing up there in her yellow dress, holding her paper, and he breathed. Then the crowd began to clap. It built slowly, and then it was everywhere, filling the shelter and spilling out into the desert heat. Cole stood in the middle of it and let it land. He stayed until the last of it was done. He helped stack chairs. He carried a cooler to someone's truck. He stood with Frank for a long while near the photograph wall, not saying much, just being there. That was enough. Daniel found him near the bike when the crowd had thinned. You heading out? Daniel asked. Yeah, Cole said. He pulled on his jacket and picked up his helmet. You got everything you need? Daniel smiled. It was a quiet smile, the kind a person wears when they cannot quite put the whole feeling into words. More than I did, he said. Cole nodded. He swung a leg over the motorcycle and settled into the seat. He looked back once at the shelter, at the clean timber and the desert flowers, and the sign that said, "Rest here. You are not alone." He looked at Mia, who was standing with her father, watching him. She lifted one hand and waved. He lifted 2 fingers off the handlebar the way riders do, and pointed them back at her. Then he started the engine. The road opened up in front of him, wide and pale under the afternoon sun, running straight out across the desert the way it always had. He rolled forward, and the gravel crunched under his tires, and then gave way to smooth asphalt, and the motorcycle settled into its low, steady hum. The wind picked up around him. The desert stretched out in every direction, open and honest, no place to hide and no reason to. Cole rode. He was not running from anything. He was not searching for anything either. That hollow feeling he had carried for years, the one that sat in his chest like an empty room, was gone. In its place was something warmer and heavier and real. He had stopped one afternoon on a hot road because a little girl needed help. That was all. That was everything. The highway curved gently ahead of him, and Cole Walker leaned into it, riding forward into the open light. I hope you like this story. Please share what's your favorite part of the story and where in the world you are watching from. Have a wonderful day.